All right, so we're back and ready to dive into some pretty big stories this week. I mean, post-election week, there's a lot going on. TikTok bans and AI and even some drama at the deli counter. You ready to get into it?
Absolutely, yeah. It's really fascinating how these stories, they seem kind of disconnected at first, but they all give us a glimpse into these major shifts that could be on the horizon.
Yeah, for sure. So let's start with the news that's probably been blowing up everybody's social media feeds, that potential TikTok ban. We've got a whole stack of articles here that kind of lay out the whole saga, and it's a wild one.
It really is, yeah. Remember back in April when Biden signed that executive order requiring ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, to sell the platform? Well, that deadline is coming up quick, January 2025. And if they don't comply, TikTok could be gone, vanish from U.S. app stores, poof.
And the whole reason behind this is what national security concerns.
Right, at least that's the official line.
But then you've got Trump, who initially tried to ban TikTok back in 2020. And now he's seemingly against the ban that he himself put into motion. It's a real head scratcher.
Yeah, it is, especially considering the timeline. We're talking about a very short window before Trump takes office again. There's bound to be legal battles, political maneuvering, maybe even some last-minute deals.
Oh, absolutely. So what do you think about this whole back and forth? Is it really about national security, or is there something else at play here?
Well, the articles we're looking at highlight a couple of interesting angles. Some experts suggest this could be a way for the new administration to, exert some leverage in trade negotiations with China. Others believe it's more about control over data, who gets access to this massive amount of information that TikTok collects on its users.
Right, yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, think about it. If TikTok were to disappear from the U.S., how would that change the way you get your news, connect with friends, even just kill time online? Would you even notice? It really makes you think about the role these platforms play in our lives, doesn't it?
It really does. And this whole situation, it also raises questions about the power these tech giants have. We're talking about millions of users potentially losing access to a platform they use every day.
Yeah, it's a lot to consider. Okay, so ready to switch gears from viral dances to something a little more, well, meaty. We're talking about boar's head, the deli counter staple that's suddenly facing some serious heat.
Oh, yeah, definitely. They're dealing with a massive recall of their deli meats right now due to a listeria outbreak. Over 7 million pounds of product have been pulled from shelves, and it's been linked to 10 deaths and dozens of hospitalizations. A really tragic situation.
Yeah, and what's even more alarming is that there are reports suggesting that Boar's Head might have prioritized sales over safety even after this outbreak started. One article we have here quotes a deli worker at an Ingles market, and he said that the Boar's Head representative seemed more concerned with sales figures than actually addressing those safety concerns.
It's a pretty disturbing allegation, and this recall has also brought to light some of Boar's Head's business practices that have been raising eyebrows for years. Specifically, this 80% rule.
Yeah, what's the deal with that? Sounds pretty intense.
It is. According to several sources, Boar's Head basically pressures grocery stores to stock 80% of their deli counter space with their products. It's like they're trying to squeeze out any competition.
So if you go to your local deli and you feel like you don't have a lot of choices, this could be why. It really makes you wonder how much power one brand should have. Does this change your view of Boar's Head at all? I know I'm thinking twice about what I order next time I'm at the deli counter.
Yeah, that's a valid question for sure. And it's important to remember that Boar's Head isn't just facing a recall. They're dealing with government investigations and lawsuits as well. This could have some major implications for the company's future and the deli meat market as a whole.
It's a huge story with a lot of moving parts. Okay, so we've gone from the digital world to the deli counter. Now for our next deep dive, we're heading into the world of artificial intelligence. Things are about to get really interesting under this new administration.
Oh, yeah, they are. Buckle up. Yeah, it really is a fascinating landscape. Under Biden, we saw a real push for stricter AI regulations, a lot of talk about, bias and ethical implications, the potential for misuse of this incredibly powerful technology. But now, with Trump back in the White House, Silicon Valley is expecting a much lighter touch.
Yeah, it seems like Trump's ready to kind of hit the reset button on all that. I mean,
Wow.
he said he's going to undo Biden's executive order on AI regulation. And that was really, the first step toward setting some ground rules in this rapidly evolving field. Even Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, he's voiced concerns about finding that balance, right?
Hmm.
Maintaining U.S. leadership in AI, but also, upholding democratic values.
It's a critical question, isn't it? Like, if you loosen those regulations, you could definitely see faster innovation, more economic growth. But then on the other hand, are we sacrificing the ethical considerations, potential bias in algorithms, even the possibility of, well, of AI being used for things we'd rather not even think about?
Right, yeah. It's like
Ugh.
walking a tightrope,
Okay.
trying to balance progress and responsibility. What do you think? Does AI need more regulation, or should we kind of let it develop more freely? What are the trade-offs we should be thinking about here? I mean, this conversation is only going to get more important as AI becomes, even more integrated into our lives.
Absolutely, it is. And it's one we'll definitely be following closely. But for now, let's maybe shift focus to some of these other major developments that have come out of this election. It feels like the whole political landscape is in a state of flux right now.
Yeah, where do we even begin? There's so much to unpack here beyond just TikTok and AI. It's almost like the whole playbook's been thrown out the window.
Okay, well, let's start with some of the big personnel changes. Trump's decision to appoint Susie Wiles as his chief of staff, that's definitely worth noting. She's a seasoned political operative. She played a key role in his past campaigns, and she's also the first woman to hold this incredibly powerful position.
Yeah, that's a significant milestone. I wonder what kind of impact that will have on the administration as a whole. What about Congress? With so many races still undecided, what are we looking at in terms of, the balance of power?
Right now, it looks like Republicans are likely to keep their majority in the House, and they could even gain control of the Senate. If that happens, they would have unified control of Congress, along with the presidency, which would give them a lot of power to push through their legislative agenda.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say we can expect some pretty big policy shifts if that scenario plays out. Speaking of policy shifts, Trump has been pretty vocal about his plans for foreign policy. He's talking about, reevaluating the U.S.'s involvement in NATO, taking a different approach to the war in Ukraine, potentially, shaking things up on the global stage.
His foreign policy stances have definitely gotten people talking, both here in the U.S. and internationally. He seems to be signaling a return to his America First approach, which could mean some big changes in the way the U.S. engages with the rest of the world.
Yeah, for sure. It's a big departure from the Biden administration's approach. And let's not forget about the state ballot measures. Voters across the country weighed in on a whole range of issues, from taxes and abortion to marijuana legalization. It seems like those decisions at the state level could have just as much impact on people's everyday lives as, what happens at the federal level.
Absolutely. These ballot measures, they touch on some of the most important and controversial issues facing the country right now, and the outcomes will have a real impact on policy in those states for years to come.
Yeah, and speaking of impact, we can't overlook the potential consequences for those dealing with student loans. It seems like mass student loan forgiveness programs are likely to become a thing of the past under this new administration.
That's right. While some programs like public service loan forgiveness are a bit tougher to undo because they were created by Congress, the Trump administration could certainly make them more difficult to access. And programs like the ZIVE plan, which reduces monthly payments based on income, those are likely to be on the chopping block.
It's tough, for those who are really hoping for some relief. And it just adds another layer of uncertainty to a situation that's already pretty unpredictable. It feels like so much is hanging in the balance right now.
Yeah, no doubt. This election has really set the stage for some major changes across a whole bunch of areas, really, from the tech industry and, even the deli counter to foreign policy and student loans. We're just starting to see if this is all going to play out.
And as we try to, make sense of it all, one thing's clear. We're living in a time of, well, immense change and uncertainty, right?
Hmm.
It's a lot to process. But that's, I think, what makes these deep dives so important. Wouldn't you
Yeah.
say we got to stay informed, engage in these conversations, and try to understand these forces that are shaping our world?
Absolutely. It's about connecting the dots,
Yeah.
understanding how complex these things really are and asking the right questions. And that's exactly what we're trying to do here on the deep dive.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, we're not here to just, regurgitate headlines. We want to help you make sense of it all, dig a little deeper, uncover the stories behind the stories.
Speaking of uncovering stories, I think it's time for that final thought, that little nugget of insight we leave you with to ponder as you go about your day.
I like that. A nugget of insight. And I think today's nugget comes from the sheer range of topics we've covered. I mean, from deli counters to the digital world, with a stop at the White House along the way. This election seems ready to really shake things up, but here's the question. What are you most curious to see unfold in the coming months?
What a great question. Is it the fate of TikTok, the future of AI, those power dynamics at the grocery store, or maybe something else entirely? Whatever it is, keep those questions coming, keep exploring.
Well said. And don't forget to check out the show notes for links to all the sources we talked about today. It's always a good idea to go straight to the source and form your own opinions. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.